I had a crisp $20 bill burning a hole in my pocket. It has been close to a month since I've seen a movie in theaters, so when I got the chance to watch something on VOD for the first time that I have not already seen since the coronavirus started, I took my shot. So, what did I spend that $20 on? Trolls World Tour, of course. Was it money well spent? No. No, it was not. This movie is directed by Walt Dorn and David P. Smith and stars Anna Kendrick, Justin Timberlake, Rachel Bloom, Ron Funches, James Corden, and Sam Rockwell. This is a sequel that the story is almost non-existent. It's basically just Infinity War made specifically for kids, and it takes a long time to get really nowhere and do nothing, and presents little for the audience to enjoy. The first Trolls from 2016 had a sense of humor that felt surreal in a way that it didn't belong in a kid's movie, in a good way. And there were a few jokes and visual gags in this movie that have the same energy, but a lot of it is just lol random humor that I don't think anybody likes or connects with. And when it is funny, the jokes are few and very far between. As for the voice acting, Timberlake is on par with his abilities. He has never been a very good voice actor, in my opinion, so it's pretty on par. Anna Kendrick is good as usual, but her singing skills have always been questionable, in my opinion, and that continues in this. I really like Sam Rockwell with what he does and the character that he plays, but the biggest problem for me voice-wise in this movie is Rachel Bloom. Her voice acting just does not work for a villain and does not work for the character and for the story as a whole. As for the soundtrack, I really like the original songs that were in this movie, all three of them, but the soundtrack is terrible. There's not a single relevant song in this movie. For example, they decided to pull Oppa Gangnam Style and Party Rockers in the House Tonight out of nowhere and are two featured songs. The only song that I think is relevant to this movie is a song by Anderson .Paak that's over the credits. That's the only thing that's relevant. That's the only song that's relevant in the entire movie. Yes, they involve K-pop, but they do next to nothing with it. I rather liked Trolls from 2016. It was irreverent and fun in ways I did not expect it to be. But Trolls World Tour is just an absolute drag. And the worst part of the movie is the world building. The film throws everything out of the window from the original and rebrands it into something that feels like a complete standalone movie. It blatantly disregards everything for a world that doesn't make any sense. Yes, the movie expands the world in ways that sequels should and builds on it, but in ways that don't make any sense. I like the way the movie is animated, the characters and the world as a physical source, but narrative-wise, it spits in the face of the original by introducing things that, quite frankly, don't make any sense and don't really work. I mean, they break up the world into 6 different forms of music: techno, country, rock, classical, funk, and pop, and 3 of those are basically the same thing. And then they throw in reggae, yodeling, K-pop, and jazz, and I'm not quite sure how any of this fits together. They shoehorn this idea of copying Infinity War with 6 strings, but choose forms of music that don't make any sense together. Classical, country, and pop, and maybe rock all make sense as 4 separate things. But then techno is not big enough to be considered one of them. Yes, it is a style of music, but I would wrap that into pop. And funk, I think, can also fit into pop. I just don't understand why they chose those 6 to be the main things. It doesn't work for the world and it doesn't work for the story. It just feels stupid, and they do something with pop, rock, and country. They don't do anything with funk. They don't do anything with techno, and they do jack shit with classical. And it just makes me question why they chose those. And that's the whole point of this movie. It all just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. The world makes no sense. What they did with it makes no sense. What they changed from the original, why they changed it, makes no sense. It's like someone had a speckle of an idea when Infinity War's first trailer came out. Like, oh shit, we could do that. Let's do that. Let's just copy that and have no other organic ideas or creativity thrust into this movie. Let's just throw something up on the screen that's copying off another thing, do nothing with the story, have it lead nowhere, and copy Infinity War and hope that we can make a buck. And then that's why this movie got pulled from the theaters and put onto VOD. Illumination at least has a hope that their story for Despicable Me 4, Minions 2, The Rise of Gru, whatever the hell it's called, they have hope that that story is well enough to make money in the theater. Whereas Trolls World Tour feels half-assed and almost like a 90s direct-to-DVD Disney movie. And that's essentially what this is. It feels like all of that Netflix regurgitated bullshit that DreamWorks does, put into 90 minutes and thrown into a theater with 10 minutes of credits just to barely push it over the theatrical runtime. That's all this movie is. That's all it tries to be, and that's all that it wants to be. It's not bad. It's not offensive. It's not completely terrible on the same levels as some of these other... For example, I watched Sherlock Gnomes, a sequel to Romeo and Juliet, the other day. That's an absolute fucking cash grab that had no creative ingenuity or creativity to it. Trolls at least had some things that were injected into this that felt somewhat organic. But as a whole, it's a shitty, bad knockoff that does not feel connected at all to the original. At all. The only time anything is acknowledged from the original movie is in the literal last shot of the film. It has nothing to do with the first one. It could literally be a standalone movie on its own. Like, they picked up a script off the street that could never get produced in Hollywood. They're like, oh, inject this with some Infinity War, slap the trolls on it. There we go. Bada bing, bada boom. We got a movie. It's just... It's not insulting, it's just bad. And if I had gone to the theater with Regal Unlimited and had not paid for this movie, that would be one thing. But the fact that I spent $20 to watch it, forget that it was in the comfort of my own house. I could give less of a shit about that. Paying $20 for this movie is almost insulting. 5.6 out of 10.